Is the man who has held the reins of Russia for 2 decades a narcissist? Welcome to our exploration of an intriguing personality that commands global attention, Vladimir Putin. Today, we'll be venturing into the realm of psychology, dissecting the personality traits of this powerful figure, with a particular focus on the characteristics of narcissism. Vladimir Putin, a name that resonates with power and authority, the man who has been the face of Russia for over 20 years. His chess-playing strategies, his tough guy image, and his commanding presence have always been subjects of fascination. But what if we told you there's more to this enigmatic leader than what meets the eye? Could the traits that make him such a formidable leader also point to narcissism? Could his past actions and decisions provide evidence of this personality disorder? Is he simply misunderstood, or is there a darker side to his character? Join us as we delve into the life of Putin and examine the evidence of narcissism. Born in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, Putin's early life was marked by struggle and ambition. Vladimir Putin, the second child of his parents, was born into a working-class family in post-war Soviet Union. His early years were anything but easy. Amidst the rubble of a war-ravaged city, Putin developed a tenacity that would shape his life. He was a scrappy kid, often getting into fights, but it was in these early battles that a spark of ambition was kindled. This ambition took a tangible form when he was 12. Inspired by a Soviet spy film, Putin decided he wanted to become a spy himself. He didn't just dream, he acted. He walked into the local office of the KGB, the Soviet secret police, and inquired about joining. They told him to get an education and learn a foreign language, so he did just that. He threw himself into his studies with a single-minded focus. His drive and ambition were evident even at this young age. This was a boy who, despite his humble beginnings, was determined to rise above his circumstances. These traits, ambition, drive, a relentless pursuit of personal goals, are often associated with narcissism. But were these early signs of the personality trait or simply the hallmarks of a determined young man? His ambition led him to join the KGB, marking the start of his political career. As an agent in the KGB, Putin began to display traits that could be indicative of narcissism. The KGB, the main security agency for the Soviet Union, was where Putin cut his teeth in the world of espionage and power games. It was here that he started to show some of the classic hallmarks of narcissism. Let's delve into some of these instances. Putin's desire for power and control, for instance, was evident from the early days of his KGB career. He was known for his ambition, ruthlessly climbing the ranks and showing a relentless drive to reach the top. This unwavering focus on self-advancement, often at the expense of others, is a common characteristic of narcissistic personalities. But it's not just about power and ambition. Narcissism also involves a lack of empathy, and Putin's tenure in the KGB provides several examples of this trait. He was involved in operations that required a certain cold-bloodedness, a willingness to make hard decisions without apparent emotional turmoil. This detachment, this ability to disconnect from the emotional consequences of one's actions, is another key indicator of narcissism. In addition, Putin's KGB career highlighted his ability to manipulate situations and people to his advantage. He was known for his cunning and strategic thinking, using these skills to maneuver himself into positions of power and influence. This manipulation, this ability to use others as pawns in his own grand game, is another sign of a narcissistic personality. Yet it's important to remember that these traits don't definitively prove Putin is a narcissist. They're indicators, signs that could suggest a narcissistic personality, but they're not conclusive proof. Psychological diagnoses should be left to the professionals. What we're doing here is exploring possibilities, analyzing behaviors, and drawing potential conclusions based on observable traits. His time in the KGB set the stage for his rise to the top of Russian politics. It was a platform that allowed Putin to hone his skills, to develop the traits that would later define his leadership style. Whether these traits are indicative of narcissism is a question that remains open for debate. Putin's rise to power was swift and decisive, further fueling the question of narcissism. Let's delve into this a bit further, shall we? The journey from obscure KGB officer to the leader of one of the world's superpowers is nothing short of remarkable. This transition didn't happen overnight, of course. It was a calculated progression, filled with shrewd political maneuvering and an unrelenting ambition that could easily be seen as indicative of a narcissistic personality. Let's consider his manipulation of the media, for example. In the late 90s, Putin successfully managed to turn the media into his personal propaganda machine, effectively controlling the narrative about his rise to power. This was no accidental feat. It took a level of cunning and strategic planning that is often associated with narcissists. They crave admiration and validation, and what better way to achieve this than by controlling how you're portrayed to millions? Another possible indication of narcissism lies in Putin's apparent disregard for democratic norms. He rose to power in a time when Russia was trying to establish itself as a democratic state. But Putin, ever the opportunist, saw this as a chance to consolidate his power. He manipulated the system, bending the rules to his will, and effectively sidestepped the democratic process to claim the presidency. His actions during this period were ruthless, to say the least. He suppressed opposition, curtailed civil liberties, and even allegedly orchestrated a series of apartment bombings to instill fear and rally support for his cause. Such actions could be seen as displaying a lack of empathy, a hallmark of narcissism. It's important to remember, however, that these are potential indications of narcissism, not definitive proof. The interpretation of these actions is largely subjective, but there's no denying that Putin's rise to power was marked by a level of ruthlessness and ambition that is hard to ignore. As president, Putin's potential narcissism became even more apparent. But that's a story for the next part of our journey. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the enigma that is Vladimir Putin. As president, Putin has shown a disregard for international norms and a hunger for power that could suggest narcissism. Let's take a closer look at some of his actions during his presidency. One of the most blatant examples is the annexation of Crimea in 2014. This action showed a clear disregard for international law as it violated the territorial integrity of Ukraine, a sovereign nation. This move was widely condemned by the international community, yet Putin remained undeterred, signifying his lack of concern for global opinion. Then there's the manipulation of the Russian constitution. In 2020, Putin orchestrated a change to the constitution that effectively allows him to remain in power until 2036. This move was seen by many as a blatant power grab, indicative of a leader more interested in maintaining control than in promoting democracy or the welfare of his people. And let's not forget about human rights. Putin's administration has been linked to numerous human rights abuses, including the suppression of free speech, the persecution of political opponents, and the marginalization of marginalized groups. These actions suggest a leader who values his own power and control over the rights and freedoms of his citizens. Each of these actions in isolation could be seen as the actions of a leader making tough decisions in a complex world. However, when viewed together, they paint a picture of a man who is willing to do whatever it takes to maintain power, regardless of the cost to others. This disregard for the rights and opinions of others, combined with a constant need for power and control, are classic signs of narcissism. While it's important to remember that only a trained psychologist can diagnose a mental health condition, the patterns we see in Putin's behavior certainly seem to align with the traits often associated with narcissism. Putin's actions as president provide the strongest evidence yet of his potential narcissism. So, is Putin a narcissist? The evidence certainly seems to suggest so. We've traveled through time, delving into Putin's past, examining his rise to power, and scrutinizing his actions as the leader of Russia. From his early life, we noticed a pattern of strong-willed determination, a trait that continued to manifest throughout his KGB career. His political ascent was marked by a strategic chess game of power, where he emerged as the victor, demonstrating an intense desire for dominance and control. As president, his actions have often been characterized by a disregard for the feelings and rights of others, an inflated sense of self-importance, and a fixation on unlimited success and power. These are all hallmarks of narcissistic personality disorder, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. However, it's important to note that while these traits suggest narcissism, they don't confirm it. We're not psychologists, and we can't diagnose Putin. But what we can say is that these patterns raise questions about his personality and how it impacts his leadership style. The implications of having a narcissistic leader are wide-ranging. They can affect the decisions made, the relationships with other countries, and the overall direction of the nation. While we can't diagnose Putin, his actions certainly raise questions about his personality. One thing is clear, though: Putin's potential narcissism has had a profound impact on his leadership and on Russia itself.